Hey, it's Jess, and welcome to Becoming Heartstrong. I'm a social entrepreneur, speaker, mother, and business owner, and I'm here because I believe in you and I want you to live your full potential. My mission with this podcast is simple: to offer you perspectives, tools, and inspiration to help you live with more courage, rebuild after setbacks, and strengthen yourself from the inside out. So each week, I talk to thought leaders, authors, experts, and everyday amazing people who share their stories and outlooks that help you get from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow. Let's get started. Do you ever feel like you have something great inside of you, but you just aren't sure how to bring it to life? Do you ever need some clarity on how to get from where you are to where you want to be? I'm so excited to share a free guide I created just for you. This tool has helped me in my own times of struggle and doubt. It's called Your Future Self Guide. This mini course includes a future self visualization I recorded, a series of journal questions, and some insights from me about overcoming self-doubt and embracing self-leadership. You can download it for free at jessicalindberg.com/futureself. That's jessicalindberg.com/futureself. Let's get back to the show. Welcome to Becoming Heartstrong. Today, I'm so excited to talk to Kelsey Lensman. Kelsey is a certified nutrition and sports medicine specialist, an entrepreneur, and a highly sought after speaker with a passion for women's fitness. She owns Empower Her Fitness, which coaches women all over the country in their nutrition, fitness, and mindset. She also runs Empower Her events, all women's international strength events that challenge women to step out of their comfort zone and show themselves they're stronger than they think. Her unique approach to fitness has helped hundreds of women get results, grow their mindset, and become strong, confident versions of themselves. She's a 5-time bodybuilding competitor, a 3-time powerlifting competitor, and she loves pushing her own boundaries, if you can't tell. She has successfully finished Mission 48, where she competed in 48 fitness competitions in 48 states in 48 days, which I can't wait to find out more about, to fund Girls for Rocks, Ruling Our Own Experiences, a nonprofit organization that develops confident girls who control their own relationships, experiences, decisions, and futures. And her goal is simple. It's to inspire women to do hard things, push their limits, and build true confidence. And I'm so excited to chat all those things because I know all of these things have helped me so much in my life. I'm a big fan of lifting weights and being strong. So Kelsey, welcome to the podcast.
Jessica, thank you so much. It's funny, whenever somebody reads an intro, I'm like, is that really me? Because it doesn't feel like it. So I'm just so excited to be with your audience and to share some nuggets.
Yes, I'm so excited. So I want to start out with Mission 48. Let's just start because I think that is so cool. When I first met you, I'm like, this is very awesome. So tell me about it. Tell us where the vision came from, like how you started it. Like, tell us all the things.
All right, let's deep dive. So to begin with, let's pull ourselves back about honestly 3 years ago by now. And I had a dream in my heart. I watched this documentary from his name was Iron Cowboy. And he did 50 Ironmans in 50 states in 50 days, which is wild. And 5 kids in an like it was insane. But I was watching that documentary, Jessica. I just saw it was so amazing. His high moments, of coming back to Utah and everybody was there, but also his low moments, questioning like, why am I even doing this? Overcoming the hardships. And I appreciate that because I know in my journey, whether it be fitness, business, there's been high moments, but there's definitely been low moments that I don't think a lot of people see on social media or want to share much about. But I value just being transparent. And so after that documentary, Jess, I just sat on my couch and I was like, what if? The always the question of what if that sparks some dream deep in our heart. What if I did 40 different fitness competitions in 48 states and it was originally in 48 weeks? And I had a plan of doing like a Spartan race on a Saturday and then speaking at a school for young girls on a Wednesday, right? Because I'm really a big proponent of like talking about confidence and feeling strong in your body. And I think that it's more important now than ever to get it to the younger generations. And so I sat on that idea, Jess, for literally 2 years. I was nervous to take action. I was like, oh, should I do it? Or is it just a shiny object syndrome where it's kind of distracting me from my business? And finally, like, I could not deny the stirring. It was about, no, so not last September, September of 23. And I just, kept wrestling. Do I do it? Do I not do it? And I actually took my dog on a walk for about 6 hours. I'm like, Captain, we're going on. We're going to figure it out whether we should do this or not. And faith is just really big in my life. So I remember that whole time I was just putting prayers up to the man upstairs. I was like, God, like, should I do this? Should I not? Please kind of give me a sign. And I'll have it. I've never had this happen before, but the next morning I woke up, I work out and train like I normally wake up and train in the morning. And for some reason, just that morning, I chose to do a podcast instead of listening to music like I normally do. And when I was listening to this podcast, it was by this guy that did all these different quote unquote missions, kind of similar to what I want to do, Mission 48. And he did it to raise money for charity and like push his limits. And I'm like, all right, God, gotcha. Like it was literally parallel to what I wanted to do with Mission 48. And I remember I was mid back squat. I had like whatever, 200 pounds on my back. And I was like, Kelsey, you're doing it. You don't know how you're starting. You don't know, how to pull this national campaign together, but it hasn't stopped you before of doing something that you didn't think that you could do. And so let's start it now. And so long story long, then about 6 months later, I ended up pulling this whole thing together, changed it to 48 days instead of 48 weeks. And my goal with that was obviously not to just have people watch me compete all over the country, but to really inspire a lot of women to join me. So in every single state, we had a free event for women to come join me, no matter where you were at, and it ranged everything from a half marathon to a powerlifting meet to a Spartan race and a CrossFit event. And so I really wanted to break the limits of like, you just have to be one part in fitness. It's like, if you got a body and if you're able to have breath in your lungs, no matter what your heart is, whether it's walk to the mailbox and back, whether it's do a crazy marathon or triathlon, push your hard, and then you're going to see a whole nother version of yourself on the other side.
That's incredible. That's How did you coordinate 48 different states? And like, I was thinking about that when I was reading. I was like, that's a doozy of sorts, right?
The logistics, Jess, were the hardest part. And it's not like I didn't have a massive team. I had, a few team members that helped me, on the coaching side and take over some of the business stuff that I had to pull myself out of. But it was a lot of just you figure it out. And so I remember I was just day in, day out, I had a picture of the United States. I printed it off and I would draw and like the lines from state to state. And I would be like, okay, it might make more sense to go to this city instead of this city. And so you just figure it out. But the logistics were crazy.
That's incredible. So I have to ask you, are you following, I think his name is Paul Johnson. It's April of 2024, and he's running across the United States to
No,
raise money for
I
like a
didn't know
veteran
that.
service organization. Yeah, it's very cool. And I can send it to you after we're done. But it reminds me of that, and it's so inspiring. He's like literally running like 60 miles a day. I have a son that's a big runner, so but it's really
Wow.
awesome. And I just think when people do that, it shows us that we can do harder things than we think. And I think that it's such a gift to have a healthy body and have a healthy heart. And so many people don't use that gift. And that's the other thing that I thought of when I read about your thing, is that I mean, I have a disabled son. Like, I know that that is such a blessing. And to be healthy and to be able to utilize that. So I think that I'm so excited to dive in more, but I love that you're doing that and that you have done it. And I also noticed in your story that you were thinking about going to PT school, and then you kind of shifted, and what I want to dive into here is just when we have a plan in our life, we think that we're going to do something, but then we get that little voice, whatever you want to call it, your intuition, the Holy Spirit, something, and you're like, maybe I'm supposed to go a different way. And there's a lot of undoing, because maybe people are expecting something of us. Maybe we're expecting something of ourselves. Maybe we don't know if we have the resources to make this thing happen. So I'm just wondering if you can share a little bit about that little path diverge that you took, and how you were thinking about some of those obstacles in your mind at the time.
Oh, I'm so glad you're going here because that was a kind of crossroads moment in my life where I either had the safe route, meaning physical therapy is still amazing, and I would have made a great career out of it, right? But it is what I was going to say that I was going to do for 8. And then I had this other route of, ooh, so much unknown, so much instability, so much potential success, but also quote unquote failure, even though I don't necessarily think about failure in the same way that I did before. But to bring kind of everybody back, I was an undergrad at Ohio State. I was in sports medicine. So when I was there, I was doing clinicals with a lot of the sports teams, doing injury prevention and rehab. And when I was my junior year at Ohio State, I also kind of flip flopped my own personal life 180. I went from previously being the athlete to not being the athlete anymore, and kind of having that identity shift of, okay, who are you, without these sports. And I remember I was just giving to everybody around me. I was giving my time to clinicals. I was getting the good grades. I was doing the quote unquote right thing, right? But I remember just waking up one morning and I felt so empty internally. Like I remember looking in the mirror and being like, Post, like, who are you? Really, yes, seeing my physical body, but not seeing that light in my eyes, not seeing that fire or just, you know, heart strong, like just that feeling in my heart too. And so I was like, okay, Kelsey, you're going to get you good again. And I had no idea what that meant. But I remember saying, just get back into the gym. You're not working out. That's got to be good for you. You know this previously. So I got back in the gym and I just kept showing up for myself. I was not perfect at it. I didn't even know how to squat correctly and bench correctly and do all these things that people see me doing today, but I just kept showing up. And I remember after that junior year, I once again really 180'd my life, and I achieved goals from stepping on bodybuilding stages, and honestly, not even just the physical body. I achieved goals internally that I didn't think that I could do. And I also realized that it's about the whole human. It's not just how you move your body or how you fuel your body nutrition, but it's also what's going on in your mindset. It's also who are you surrounding yourself with, right? To really help you take yourself to the next level. And so that 180 flip combined with me being in the sports medicine world, I really wanted to help people prevent injuries versus just help them after injury. Because I would see a lot of people in the gym when I was training not knowing how to RDL or do deadlifts, and they're like, that's where their back's hurting. And then I'm seeing them on the clinical side, and I'm like, man, if we could help prevent this, that would make way more sense. And so, once again, you hit the nail on the head, Jess. I just had that gut feeling literally 3 months before I graduated. Everybody was getting physical therapy for like PT grad school, letters of acceptance. And that was very outside of my normal to deviate. I was very much the play it safe girl. Like, do what's right, have 2.5 kids, have a white picket fence. Like, that's how I was previously. And I remember saying, okay, Kels, 90, 80, 90 years from now, when you're on your rocking chair, are you going to look back on this moment and say, what if you did? What if you took the chance? What if you actually started the business that you don't even know how to start a business? You have no idea what even you're going to, serve or sell or anything. But what if you help people change the way that you knew that you changed, And so I remember kind of taking that moment 3 months before, and I'm like, Kels, it's kind of now or never. Not that you can never start a business later, but that was a pivot point in my journey. And so I took the leap of faith, and it's been highs, lows, and everything in between. But I'm so grateful that I have versus just play it safe at the end of the day.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And yeah, and that this will change the trajectory of your life, right? In terms of whatever comes after this. And I think that's such a important point to make, because we none of us want to be in the what if category, right? We all want to like just live out loud as much as we can for the time that we have. And so you're coaching women on like all fitness levels. And so on a big picture, I want to start here a little bit talking about women, and like where do you think that they are these days in terms of fitness? Like maybe what are the things that they're thinking about? What are their challenges? Like what are you seeing sort of collectively in women that you are working with?
Oh, that's a great question. I will say, I'll preface, it's getting better. We are out of the completely low fat era where everybody's afraid of fat, which is amazing. Like it's getting better. More women and girls are getting into the strength training versus just having to be cardio bunnies 24/7. But I will say, what I see more than anything is women are under eating and they're overdoing it when it comes with cardio and all the things that they feel like they need to do to burn off the fuel that they think they need to earn. And I tell all of our women that come into our coaching program specifically, if I could give a rough percentage, and don't quote me on this, it's about 85 to 90% of women won't even realize they're under eating. And so it's a lot of unlearning and reprogramming kind of our thoughts about food, and not only just the relationship with food, but really how much your body needs fueled. And realizing that from the results, whether it be body composition changes or whether it be strength or honestly just longevity, we really want to focus on building some adequate muscle versus just losing fat, because at the end of the day, that's really going to help you from every goal that you have going forward. So it's a lot of unlearning and reprogramming and breaking a lot of beliefs, honestly, that people had before.
That's interesting. I was thinking about this. I was going to a concert with a friend of mine, and her high school girls were getting ready. Like a bunch of girls were getting ready to go. And I heard one of them say, I'd rather have a bigger booty than big boobs. And I thought to myself, well, now we're getting somewhere because you know what I mean? Like their generation is recognizing like how like a strong booty is better than just having big boobs. Like I thought that was really interesting. And it was like I kind of heard it in the background, but I was like, that is a shift of where maybe
Mhm.
girls were 15, 20 years ago. I mean, do you see that?
Yeah. I remember this would have been not to completely show my age and everything like that, but I graduated high school 2014. And so I remember that was kind of the shift of, just doing cardio and all that. And then there were starting to be more people on social media learning how to lift weights. And so I think ever since kind of like that 2014, 15, yes, it was before that, but a big shift more on social media. Girls, I think, are realizing, okay, it's cool to lift weights. It's cool to see your muscles in the mirror and feel strong, and if we can shift that in women and especially young girls, you look at yourself as not something to just shrink, 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 and get as small as you can, but really something to build. And when you can look at it from like a gain standpoint, like, hey, I want to build muscle versus just shrink everything away. That's such a more empowering way to look at it, and little do they know that's actually going to help them get the body comp to everything that they want to.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's cool. I love that that shift is happening. So you talk about like you want women to be the next level version of themselves, and I want to get into confidence a little bit because I think like you touched on that. Women historically and now, I mean, struggle with confidence. There's so many. Even my husband will be like, it's hard to be a woman. Like everything out there is like, I mean, men wear like essentially the same clothes they've always worn. Like there's now like, performance khakis, but there's still, there things haven't changed, but there's always with women something different, something we should be buying, something we should have. Everything that women want and, desire is expensive. Like there's just a lot of pressure. And so how do we build confidence in women, and like what does that look like for you? And I know it's a big topic and there's a lot of different things we could talk about, but in through the lens of you and what you're doing, like how do we do that?
You are hitting the nail, like you are hitting my heart right now because this is the topic that I love talking about because this is what I struggled with so heavily back in the day. And I always say confidence is an inward game. It's not an outward game, meaning, what clothes that you wear or what car that you have or what bag that you have. And I think especially in the culture that we're in, it can feel like, well, once I get this thing that's outside of me, then I'm going to feel confident. For me and my journey, once I get the six pack, once I get the body, then I'm going to feel confident. And then I was on this stage with a six pack and a body that I never thought I could get. And I realized it had nothing to do with the body, you know? And so I always say that confidence, truly, truly self confidence, it's you keeping the promises to yourself. It's, hey, when you wake up and you don't want to go work out because it's the last thing that you want to do and you're, cuddling with your dog and it's comfy. Hey, you made a promise to yourself last night that you're going to do this today. Do you keep that promise and show up? Or do you break that promise and then that little voice convinces you, well, just do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and the same thing happens. And I like to think about self confidence, Jess, of if I had a friend, let's say you and I, okay? Let's say you told me, hey, Kels, we're going to go to dinner on a Friday night. And I said, okay, cool. Let's go to this place on Friday night. And then you texted me 5 minutes before, you're like, hey, I can't show up. Okay. I said, okay, cool. That happened once. That's okay. And then the next Friday happened. And then we had once again plans. And then you didn't show up. Would I be a little bit less confident in you of actually showing up and keeping your word? Yeah. Right. It makes sense. You broke those two promises. Not that you can never, deviate from plans, but that makes sense. Same thing happens with you internally, right? When you say, hey, I'm going to drink my glass of water tomorrow, first thing before coffee, and you do it, great, that builds that internal confidence, that builds that internal trust within yourself. So the next thing that you say that you're going to do, guess what you're going to do? You're going to probably do it, or else that momentum is going to carry you forward. Okay. Once again, though, people can say, then, Kels, what happens when I break a promise? Because Lord knows, even me to this day, and I do all the things, and people see me on social media, I still don't keep 100% of promises to myself. I'm not perfect, right? But I always say it's a momentum game. Okay, just as much as you can gain that momentum and keep yourself going forward, you can also lose it at times. You're not expecting yourself to be perfect, but hey, the next promise that you make, keep that promise. Okay, that next day that you show up for yourself, keep that day that you show up for yourself. And then through that, Jess, when people realize that it's really built, it's not just given, then you realize it's available to everybody. It's not just Susie over there that has these things that you don't have, because I also thought that too. It's really cultivated and built within you. And through that, it gives us the power to be able to build it much, but then also potentially not build it if we're not keeping those promises to ourselves too.
I love that idea about keeping our promise to ourselves. And I think that, that's one thing that is a challenge sometimes in a family. I know there's sometimes that I have struggled to do things because I'm a mom and I have kiddos and they need me, and I have a husband and he owns a business, and there's all the things. But one of the things that I have started to do, and this podcast is a good example, I've had a lot of starts and stops with my podcast because of, personal circumstances. But when I decided to restart recording, I got my family in the kitchen and I'm like, listen, once this starts, it's not stopping. So I need you all to come alongside me and help me, because, I show up. My kid shows up to basketball practice every week. My kid shows up to running every day. My husband shows up to work every day. Like, I, women are often I'll call them the quarterbacks of our whole culture. I think, we're always the people that make sure everyone else has what they need. That's sort of like our nurturing nature, but we tend to then forego ourselves. And so I think if you want to do something, sometimes it's important to announce it to a friend,
So
to your family, put it up on a board, whatever it is, and say, this is what I'm doing. And I need your support, friends, self, kids, to do this, because otherwise it's not going to happen.
Mm. I love that you pulled that in and brought that in, because I mean you're giving to your kids, you're giving to your husband, you're giving to so much around you. And we see it with the coaching clients that we have. It's like I love it, but you don't need to be superwoman at everything at every moment at every time, you know? And I think breaking that belief of, well, I just need to do all the things and then also do all the things for myself, like something's gotta give. I have an analogy that I'll use sometimes with our clients of like glass balls and rubber balls. Okay. There's some things in life or just in the phase of life that you're in are glass balls, right? For you, that's your kids. Like you can't let that ball drop or else your kids are going to go hungry. But sometimes a rubber ball might be, hey, you know what? This is just not the season for me to go out every weekend. If I really want to prioritize my business and my family and those aspects, that doesn't mean if I drop that ball, it's just going to completely combust. It's going to bounce up and I can pick it up again and bounce it again, right? And so, really identifying in the phase of life that you're in, hey, what are my glass balls? What are my non negotiables? And I would honestly say to especially women listening, limit it to 2 or 3, not 10, not 12, but like 2 or 3 glass balls. And then realize that these rubber balls, you're not failing at life. You're not failing being whatever you want to be. But not every moment can we have all these 20 balls up in the air and pretend like we're still going to have success in doing what we're doing. And sometimes narrowing down that, hey, what is my focus in these next 2, 3 months can help you realize, like, okay, I don't put all this pressure on myself. And it gives you clarity to then be able to follow through on those promises too at the end of the day.
That's good. And that's what builds self-confidence, right? I mean, to know that you're following
That's
through for
correct.
yourself. And you mentioned something, and I think you alluded to it when you're talking about, you were standing on stage, you had the six pack, yet you
Yeah.
weren't 100% fulfilled. Like, what's the difference between perceived confidence and true self-confidence? Because I think both of those
Mm.
things are happening on social media these days, especially the perceived confidence. Like, how do you see that? And how can you help women distinguish between the two, or even like young women who are listening, if they're younger, like what does that look like?
This is so good, Justin. This is something that I didn't realize when I was, early 20s, late teens in high school. I had no idea the differences of it. And I'll share a story, then I'll follow up with your question is I was, in the bodybuilding world, seeing all these people on social media, outwardly, they looked like they had it all. They had the body, they were posting the good pictures, they had the boyfriend on their arm, like everything looked great if you would scroll social media and see it. But these same girls, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, right? We always usually lead off on a good fit. So I'm not this rainbows and sunshine version of me. But those same girls that I would see behind the scenes, it was a completely different life, right? how they were feeling, what they were going through was so different. And I think, not to completely make this about social media, but when people see and scroll and say, man, their life just looks perfect, or they have the bag, they have the car, they have the family, it's like you really have no clue what's going on behind the scenes, right? And so this is where I really like to bring in the perceived confidence versus true confidence. Perceived confidence is, man, you see them with the family that looks perfect, right? Or you see them with the handbag that is the next one on the market that everybody wants, it's perceived as confidence. Or you buy this thing, or you have this body that makes you think, once I get this, I'm going to be confident. But like I said, when I was on that stage, there were still certain insecurities of myself. There were still certain, hey, when I had this thing, it wasn't like I was on this mountaintop moment, right? And so conversely, this is where I like to talk about true confidence, is that internal built confidence. It's that, hey, unshakable, nobody can, I'm not going to say mess with you, but nobody can take that internal true confidence away from you. You can't take that away with me keeping a promise to myself. You can take the car, the body, the whatever, you can take all those things away, but I still have this internal confidence of I show up for me. And that is something, Jess, that I think nowadays is so important, because you see all these external things. You think, once I get there, and then there just keeps on moving. And then you realize 20 years down the road that you're never going to get there, quote unquote. That when you realize that it's an internal game, that's when it can change so much for you and help you realize that you can build it, or you just need to get it.
Yeah, I love that. When I was prepping for this podcast, I was reading just some things online about women's confidence and some different studies, and there was an article in Harvard Business Review that suggested that a strategy for helping women increase confidence was to lean into courage. And I thought this was really cool, that because
Mm.
it's like, focus on practicing courage in your daily life. That's how you'll increase confidence. And so, I'm going to show up for myself. I'm going to have a little bit of a harder workout today. I'm going to keep my podcast going. I'm going to speak up for something that I believe in. Whatever it is, like, I think that that courage can fuel confidence, because when we know that we can do hard things, and it's something simple, but it was like, oh, I really like that. And I think encouraging women to be more courageous in our lives, and whatever that looks like, is a passport to confidence. Do you agree?
Oh my gosh, I'm actually really glad that you brought this up, because there's one piece about confidence that I didn't share that I think is so important. Because it's when you step into new arenas, maybe that's for somebody listening, their fitness journey. That is a new arena, right? Maybe for somebody that's starting a business. I always tell women, you shouldn't be confident yet. You've never done it. So yes, it's about keeping those promises, but as you continually step out of your comfort zone, you shouldn't be like, hey, I can 100% get this, Jessica and Kels. Like, I know exactly the pathway, because you've never done it before, right? And so to bring in what you shared, like, flex your courage muscle, right? To be like, hey, I don't know how I'm going to get there, or I don't know the best pathway yet. But as I step out of that comfort zone, and I flex that courage muscle over and over, guess what? Over time, once again, you're going to build that confidence, and that's going to help you in the long run. So I love about that courage muscle. And similar, as much as you build it up, also it can atrophy, right? And so continually taking those courageous steps.
Hey there, it's Jess, and we're taking a brief pause to highlight this show's sponsor, the Heartstrong Collective. It's more than just a nonprofit, it's a social movement I founded to inspire people worldwide to embody resilience and grow through challenges. Through the Heartstrong Collective, we're dedicated to empowering caregiving families, investing in the next generation, and leaving the world just a little bit better than we found it. To learn more about our mission and how you can get involved, visit us at theheartstrong.com. So I want to talk about Empower Her Fitness, because that's your business, and we'll talk about it a little bit more at the end. But tell us, like, what you're building here, and how you're training women, and what's unique about what you're doing based on all these ideas around confidence and stepping out of your comfort zone.
Mm, yeah. So we basically have like two main facets to Empower Fitness. So our one facet is we do coaching. So it's one-on-one nutrition and fitness coaching, where we really take the woman. I always say it's about you as a human, not just having the right quote unquote meal plan or having the right quote unquote training plan, right? It's about really helping women work with their body, work with their mindset, break some of the limiting beliefs down that's holding them back, and build themselves up. to help them get to whether that's a, body composition that they want or a strength goal that they want or just improve their life in a way. And so we work really closely. We keep small rosters for a reason. I'm not, a person that just carries 100 people and says, hey, just eat this thing. It's like, no, no, no. We really want to dive in with you. And we talk nutrition, training, mindset, and also accountability and support. And so our big goal is to, build these women up. And I always tell them too, we shouldn't need you forever, right? Like or you shouldn't need us forever. So if you're with us forever, that means we're really not doing our job. And so my end goal for all of our coaching clients is, hey, you're able to know how much do I need to fuel my body? Do I want to turn it on or turn it off in the future? You feel really good about it. And then the second portion of the business too is what we call have empower fitness events, where they're all women's strength events that we have around the country. And we've had ages just actually this upcoming event, we're going to have a 7-year-old all the way up to a 72-year-old, which is
That's
wild. It's so
amazing.
cool.
I love it.
And so what those events are is they're, like I said, all women's strength events, and women come in and usually they're not, have never competed before. They're not the big power lifter that's lifting 500 plus pounds, even though sometimes we have that. But it's really for the women to step out of their comfort zone and really see how strong they really are. And so usually they'll compete in squat or bench or deadlift, and the women on that day, they break beliefs of what they're capable of. And it is, I get so excited for it. Our next one's in about 20 days, and I just get so excited for those days to really have women kind of step into that next level version.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because then I love that because we're mind, body, and spirit, right? So it's like you think that you could be confident or you think about the idea, but you're helping them reinforce that through physical movement, which I think reinforces the confidence, reinforces the courage. Like I think that it's just so integrated. And I think that's a very important and cool part about that. So you mentioned that you help women with nutrition and as a part of, and I want to talk a little bit about like fitness and fat loss and just some of the things out there. I'm going to say first, we're not doctors. We're not prescribing anything to you listeners, but we're just going to, talk about Kelsey's experience. I'm going to ask her some things that I'm curious about. But I think there's a lot of confusion around what moves the needle for women these days, including like for fat loss, for gaining muscle. Like what are some, without going into terrible detail, like what are some highlights that you think do move the needle for women?
Mm. So I will say number one, and like I said, I'm not trying to make people power lifters here, but from really talking about, increasing metabolism, really getting the body comp is number one, strength training. That is so incredibly important. And when I say strength training, it's no, hey, do 5 pounds for 20 reps to quote unquote tone. That's not what I'm talking about. That is a massive misconception. And I want to debunk that. It's really using challenging weights for yourself to facilitate that muscle growth and development. And so I always tell women we want to make sure that we're doing it right first. My whole background sports medicine, so I don't want to get people injured, right? But as you really build up that mind muscle connection and you have the right technique, really pushing those limits and utilizing weights that, man, I can't get all 10 reps on, or hey, I'm like really struggling those last few reps. That is where really muscle development is born. And so that's number one is strength training. Number two, when I talk about nutrition, is every person is different. You do not need to cut out food groups, meaning carbs are not bad for women. Okay, fat is not bad. A lot of women that come in and like I said, realize they're heavily under eating, which that's actually down regulating their metabolism and slowing everything down. And so I've had women come in, Jess, where they're like, Kelsey, I'm eating 13, 1400, maybe even 1600. I'm not either quote unquote losing weight or I'm not getting the body composition changes that I want. Like, what the heck is going on? And what I tell them, and you can see me via video, but I'll also explain this audibly too, is let's say your metabolism, your maintenance calories is, 2100, 2200. Okay. If you are constantly eating at 16, 17, 1800, what your body's going to do is, hey, you know what? You're really not giving me enough food. So let me down regulate everything to meet with where you're at. Okay. Your body survival more than anything. It is going to do anything to preserve you living. And so if that means down regulating your metabolism, it will do that. All right. And so what happens with women is they say, okay, well, let me just eat less. Let me go eat 1200. Let me go 1100. Let me go 1000. And they don't realize they're actually going in the wrong direction because once again, it's going to down regulate. And so this is very contradictory to how I first thought about it, to how a lot of women think about it is We actually need to slowly and strategically, it's called reverse dieting, increase your intake to allow your metabolism and to allow your body to actually work with it instead of against it. And so, someone we actually need to reverse diet to get them to their maintenance intake, to build the muscle, to be able to get their metabolism working with them. And then from there, you're able to either go into, a building phase or a fat loss phase after. But women primarily, like I said here, needs to work with their body instead of against it. And so that means from a strength training standpoint, that means from a nutrition standpoint. And then go ahead.
Oh no, I think that's so important and interesting. But I'm curious, like, how do you know how many calories you need? How do you figure that out?
That's a good question. So I will tell you, like I said, somebody that is your age, your height, your body weight, it's going to be different than somebody that is all of those same quantitative values, right? But what you can do, Jess, is you can go, it's called a TDEE calculator, and you can just put in some of those values, and then you can give a rough estimate for how much maintenance that you are. Like I said, though, too, your body's just not a calculator. You're not a calculator. So that's why just, plugging that into my fitness pal or going on these macro calculators don't really work for women because they also don't take it into account your history. But that at least gives you a rough estimate of like, okay, that's how much I actually kind of need. Now, where am I at in comparison? So then what do I need to do to really help me get to my goals? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So, there's a, and I know it's like a calculator. You step on it, and it kind of helps you know how much percentage of muscle you have. Is it in body? Is it called in body? It's a calculator. It's like you
Yes,
step
they have,
on it. Yeah. So,
yep.
I thought this was really interesting. I've done that before. And what was interesting about it is like I had a higher than average or normal amount of muscle in my body than people my age. And I think it's just because I've always been a more muscular person and I've always lifted some weights, maybe not. But I could see how if you have a different makeup of your body, you would need different things, right? And so is it I think that's why as I'm listening to you, I think it's important to have a person help you if you really want to dial this in because we all are different and we're showing up with different life circumstances and all the things, right?
Yeah, I mean that. Oh, 1,000%. And when I first hired a coach, and I really want to share this with women too, is I thought I failed because I couldn't figure out on my own. I almost thought as hiring a coach as a kind of quote unquote demotion, right? Well, I can't figure it out on my own, so then I got to hire a coach. When really, and I own a coaching business because I'm so passionate about it. It helped me not only just fast tracks. I'm not saying that, hey, get all these results in 3 months, but it allowed me to work smarter instead of just spending months and years, honestly, in these, uh, kind of a, what do I want to say? Like spinning my wheels and really not seeing anything. And so I will tell all the women out there that are listening to this, be very skeptical. Okay, just because they're a nutrition coach or a fitness coach online or who you're talking with does not mean they know all the things. So really do your due diligence. Really do ask people that work with them. Look at a lot of their content to make sure their values are similar, but also make sure that they are helping you work with their body. Because I've also seen it on the other side of hiring a coach and then it really not going well. So just do your due diligence as hiring a coach.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool that you started with weights and muscle and you talk about like a muscle focused mentality and I know we both like Dr. Gabrielle Lyons and she said something she said skeletal muscle is the organ of longevity and you mentioned it before when you were thinking about going to PT school like instead of helping people in the reverse you're helping people before and I actually go to physical therapy every 2 weeks for some chronic pain that I have in my neck and shoulder but as I sit there and watch because I've been doing it for a long time. And there's a lot of older people there, people that post op, but there's a lot of people who just don't move well, as they've aged and they need, and it's almost like a motivation when I sit there and be like, I don't want to be in that space. I want to be moving well when I'm that age. And so I know we talked a little bit about, strength training and the importance of that, but what is this like muscle focused mentality and why is it so important and the research is like backing it up right too as we kind of move forward in the world.
Yeah. I love that you brought this in, because when we're talking about muscle focused mentality, we kind of, and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon goes really deep with this. And so I really want to send people her way to dig into the research. But she talks a lot about that we live in a really over fat phobic type of society, right? Fat is demonized. Do this for fat loss, do this for reduce fat here. You see fat burners, right? When really we flip under the head, and she says this is we're really under muscled. We're not over fat, we're just under muscled. And when I first heard that, I thought that was very interesting. And then, just like you, Jess, I started to really dig into the research of like, okay, it sounds good, but what is actually going on here? And once I did a lot of the research too, along with her work and other people's work, it's or your muscle is such a big regulator and also your metabolism, right? We see this with our women too, of like, hey, when they have less muscle mass on their body, it really also hormonally goes in a different direction, and even metabolism goes in a different direction. And so we talk with women a lot about not necessarily what to just lose. Yes, I know if you want to lose some body fat, it's not the end of the world. Like I'm still on the same path as you, right? But we can really focus on optimizing your muscle tissue, like you said, that helps longevity, helps you live a higher quality life in the long-term future, but also optimizes your body composition, your strength. And there's a lot of studies, and I don't do not quote me on this. I will give you, Jess, I'll send you the research article after this. But I want to say it's in your 30s is when you start losing I think it's like 5% of muscle mass as a woman, 30 years old and on, right? And so when we think about from an injury prevention standpoint, that muscle mass, you being able to push yourself out of your chair, stand up on your own without needing assistance, like that is what's actually going to help you in the long run. And so we can focus on, yes, the goals that you have today, but also doing things to prevent, a harder future for you, that's going to help you. And being able to be muscle focused with that is going to be beneficial in the long run and short run for you.
And so how does protein and, in protein intake, because there's, so much about protein out there. How does that relate to
Yeah.
sort of this muscle focused mentality? And how do you think about that in terms of how much protein we should be eating? I know everyone's different, but just in general,
Yeah.
I know I was looking through Dr. Lyon's book the other night, and she recommends like 1 gram of protein for 1 gram of carb in a meal. So if let's just say you're eating 30 grams of protein in the morning for breakfast, you should really probably not exceed 30 grams of carbs, which is like 2 carb servings.
Mhm.
Is that something that you think about with your clients or with yourself? And like, how do you think about the protein component of muscle building?
Protein is protein is one of the most important components I like to hit on early on in women's journey. Is because number one, it'll help you recover and build that muscle or rebuild that muscle better. When you're strength training, you're breaking it down, right? When you're doing that training and for that hour, you're breaking it down. You really need that protein to rebuild it and replenish it. And so that protein will, yes, help for building muscle and optimizing your body comp, but it also helps with satiety. It also helps regulating your blood sugars. And so, what I really like to work with our women first is how much protein does your body actually need in the whole day? Because a lot of women don't even realize, oh my gosh, you're telling me I need 130 grams of protein and they're getting 80. Like that can feel like such a stretch, right? And so we like to stepward progression of them of like, you don't need to jump to 130 to 150 tomorrow. But when you realize that how much your body needs, once again, you realize how much fuel your body needs to get to those goals. And so we really advocate it for that. But then also you hyper focus on the morning piece of it. I depending on the person, I don't like to get too nitty gritty too early because sometimes when it's so much information, it can overwhelm them. But what I do like to hit with our women on is getting at least 30 grams of protein first thing in the morning. Not saying you cannot have carbs too with that, but really getting that protein at first meal because it helps regulate your blood sugar levels and that will help you throughout the entire day. And so post workouts an important, beginning of the day it's important, and then overall just hitting your whole protein goal for the day, which usually I like to use the same standards of 1 gram per pound of body weight. That can be helpful for lean
So would it
body
be
or
one
optimal.
optimal? So for example, let's just say that your optimal body weight is 150 pounds. Would you say that
Yep,
that's generally 150 grams of protein?
exactly. Yep. Well, I'll give you me for example. I sit right now around like 160, 165 ish. I try to get 155 to 160 per
Wow. And how do you do that?
day. A lot of learning and failing and figuring out how to. So I really like to focus on my main meals always have a protein source, right? And so that might be ground beef and tacos or chicken or salmon. Like I like to have my main meals have a main protein source. I'm not a you need to drink 5 protein shakes a day. Please do not drink 5 protein shakes a day, but I do like to have a protein powder that I'll drink post workout just to help me not only with that protein goal, but also just get into my system quicker. And then yogurt, eggs. Trying to think. There's a lot of little strategies that I've used over time that helps me get to that goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. I feel like getting over 100 grams is hard work. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And that's something that I definitely want to work on. So if you had 30
Right.
minutes to work out in your day, would you lift or would you get on the treadmill?
Oh, good question. And let's say my goals were body composition or performance. What are my goals?
Body composition.
1,000% lift, 1,000% strength train. Yes, not only like I said from a muscle standpoint, but we also let's a lot of women listen to this. We also once again want to work with our body instead of against it. And so stress, I'm not saying we want to remove all stress from our lives because Lord knows we can't, and not initially we want to. But once again, when we just do that cardio 24/7, it actually puts your body more in this sympathetic fight or flight overdrive. And so what we don't want to do is put stress on stress on stress and then keep compounding that. That's where a lot of women say, "Hey, I'm doing the things. I'm either gaining weight or I'm not making any changes." Is because they're just pushing their body into this sympathetic fight or flight over and over and over again. And so our goal here, and that's why I say strength training, is because not that it's a parasympathetic or rest and digest mode, but sometimes it will have a little bit less stress on your body overall and will help you actually work with it.
So what about women as they age? I mean, I think that's one thing I'm so happy we're becoming more aware of women. Like you said, you lose body mass and muscle as you age, but women go through so many hormonal changes through their lives, through having children, through going through perimenopause and menopause. Like, and some women go through it, I mean, surprisingly early. I have a friend who was like 40. I mean, it's crazy. So that
Mhm.
all feeds into our bodies and how they feel and how they move. And so, do you think that some of these things we're talking about are tried and true across ages, or do they change as we age, as we're younger or older?
Great question. And I'll give a plug in for somebody that she has great research, great information on perimenopause, menopause. And her name is Dr. Marie Claire. I want to say Claire Haver or Claire, one of the two.
Yeah,
I'll give you the direct.
yes. I will tag her in the show notes because I follow her as well. She's great.
Yeah, so she has some really good research on it, and it's very similar, Jess, to what we talked about. Is she really advocates women's strength training? She really advocates women fueling their bodies enough, and she really advocates. She even talks about like doing weighted vest walks and loading your body. So it's very similar across the board. We talk about protein, we talk about strength training. Yes, I know obviously there's a lot of hormonal changes, perimenopause and menopause, and that might need to come in with some supplementation or just some more nitty gritty specifics for you and your body. But overall, strength training, fueling your body enough, getting protein in, and just walking. Go outside and just walk and get some vitamin D in your body. Those are pretty standard throughout, no matter which age you are or who you are.
Yeah. Last night, I have a son in the hospital right now. It's April of 2024, and last night, like, I didn't get to do any workout because I was in the hospital, and then I came home and I was like super tired. So I was like, well, what am I going to do for myself? So I made tacos for my boys. So I'm like, I'm just going to eat some taco meat and some vegetables, and I'm going to walk a mile on my treadmill on an incline. Like, that was it yesterday. But I felt better. I mean, I didn't feel like getting on the treadmill, but it was like just that walking, it kind of brought my nervous system down a bit, and I like really felt like more relaxed, honestly, before I went to bed. Maybe that sounds counterintuitive, but it worked for me.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And we talked about not to get so much in the weeds of this, but I think people, see me and they're like, "Oh, you just train 24/7." It's like, no, no, no. I'm very specific about when I'm in this kind of sympathetic overdrive. For you, you have a family situation going on. You got a lot of energy going out. Does it make sense to necessarily strength train and put more, on that on your body? Not necessarily, right? What you didn't do is you didn't do a 30-minute hit interval workout, right? Like you didn't do that, which is good. Hey, I put it on the incline and I walked. And so you're down regulating your actual nervous system. And so that's going to help you over time. And so Jess, you hit the nail on the head, girl. Good job from yesterday.
I want to ask you one more question, kind of around this idea of stress and sleep. And I'm really asking this sort of for myself, but I know there's a lot of people out there who have all different kinds of situations in life. And women are sort of like back to that quarterback. We're quarterbacking our families, our
Right.
communities, our places of work. There's all different life situations. But, I think what affects women's bodies a lot is stress and sleep. And I see so much research out there about how important sleep is. So I have a son who is disabled and has seizures at night. So I'm pretty much up every single night dealing with him when he's, home with me. And then we all have stress because just life, we're humans. So, how do you sort of marry those two things, protein strength, which is important, but like sleep? And because I think what I feel sometimes, it's overwhelming. It's like, I can't do all of those things. I can't do all of the things. So, I can do it. I'm if I focus on it, it's something we should focus on. But I guess sometimes I think we it's like we don't want to overwhelm women. We want them to do hard things. We want them to, prioritize themselves and have courage, but we also want them to give themselves a little bit of a break. And so,
Mhm.
what would you say to sort of the woman who's like feeling really overwhelmed by all of those things, but really wants to take care of her body and wants to be healthy?
So good. 'Cause I mean, that was me too. I was like, how do I do all the things, Kels? Like, how do I do, the 10 things that people recommend? And I would say, you don't need to do all those. Let's talk about the big needle movers. Okay. I'm a big advocate of like, what are the biggest needle movers for you going forward? And then I will follow up with sleep just at the end. One of the biggest needle movers is number one, your nutrition. Okay. It does not mean eat chicken and broccoli for every single meal for every day on end, but it means, hey, can I just prioritize protein? Whether women are coming back from vacation or going on vacation, you don't need to track your macros, right? You don't need to do all the things that you might do at different seasons of your life, but just prioritize that protein. And that might even look for some women, get 3 sources of protein in the day. That is a win. Okay. And so if that is something that you're listening to this and you're like, okay, where should I start? Get 3 sources of protein. Don't worry about grams. Don't worry about how many grams it is, to get to your ultimate goal. Just focus on that, and that alone is going to be beneficial. Okay. Once you get that piece of it down, okay, maybe hit then 100 grams of protein. But then that for that next person, I'd be like, hey, just start walking outside. Do a 10-minute walk. If you're not necessarily doing that right now and you're on your computer tapping away and you never break away from work or you got a lot of family stuff going on, do a 10-minute walk, do some breathing, put some good words in your ears, and that is your workout for the day. Okay. Those two things alone, Jess, are going to move your needle forward. Okay. Period, period. All right. Then we get into a little bit more nitty gritty. That might be adding a strength training routine. Maybe 2 days a week, I'll do a full body strength training routine for 30 minutes. Okay. And then you hit on the sleep note, which is really important. Some women can't have full control of it, right? Like I have 2 dogs. I don't have 3 kids and a lot of stuff going on. So I can control usually when I go to bed and when I wake up. Okay. For some women, like you don't have that luxury that I have right now. So does that mean that you're screwed? No. Like it doesn't mean that, all hell is breaking loose, but it means, okay, then what can we do to help optimize it? Well, you know what? If I'm waking up throughout the night, I can't control that, right? But you know what? What I can control is, yeah, I'm going to do 1 minute of deep breathing that puts my brain from fight or flight mode to rest and digest mode. And it might not be shut eye sleeping, but at least we're down regulating a little bit, right? And so, like we talk about specifically for women, especially that whether mamas and they have their kiddos coming to bed with them, like we can't do all those things, but we can do is really help. Okay, what is our bedtime and awake time a little bit? If that's not there, let's try to get those in. But then if you can't control throughout the night, just really focus on 1 or 2 sessions of deep breathing throughout the day, and that'll help down regulate you a little bit to hopefully be more beneficial for you.
I love that because it gives control to an uncontrollable situation sometimes. So I think I love that idea of like helping, down regulating throughout the day. I think I'm going to do that more. I think that's a great idea. I love that. So I'm wondering, do you do Empower Her coaching online? Do you have to be in Columbus, Ohio with you? Like, can women access it that are listening today?
Oh yeah, we take people from wherever, whenever they're specifically at. So we have women coming from California to Florida, all the way up to New York City. So our coaching is primarily online. We do live retreats in our events just because I really value the in-person community too. But those are one or two times a year that people can fly in and come visit. But our coaching is specifically online. We do everything via video and calls and all of that. But also, if you want a road trip to Columbus, Ohio, I'd love to have you too. I'm down for that.
That's awesome. Well, we'll put it in the show notes, the ways that people can get in touch with you and with your team and, learn more about it. So I have a couple questions that I ask all of my guests as I kind of wrap up the podcast. And so the first one is like, what is one belief or practice that has helped you get from where you were to where you are today that you think can help our audience?
Oh, that is so good. I will say one belief is I don't need to have it all figured out. And I don't need to have everything lined up perfectly for me to take the first action step. The Kelsey 10 years ago would have not took action because she didn't see step B, step C, step D going forward, and she just wanted to play safe, right? And then once I got to these next levels, I'm like, wait, they don't have it figured out either. Like they're doing just what I'm doing, but I thought they had it all figured out, and I thought they had everything paved out for them, right? And so when you realize as you kind of get, whether it's fitness or business, you get to these higher levels, you realize they don't have anything figured out too, and we're all just kind of guessing and way and hoping for the best, to be honest with you. And so, if I could have instilled that belief earlier on, that has changed my journey and hopefully will change others too.
Mm, that's so good. And I was recording a podcast the other day, and it was more on entrepreneurship, which you are as well. But what she said too. She's like, it's this total myth that anyone knows what they're doing. We're all just figuring it out. It's so true. And so I also want to ask you, what is one thing that you love about yourself because of hardship or disappointment that you've experienced? So, like something you say, I love this about Kelsey, about myself, because it's been built through adversity.
I will say there's two things that come up. One of the first things that come up for me is like I literally think my superpower is I just don't give up. To be honest with you, I think so many people, see what I do. They don't see kind of the failures. I try to be very open about the failures along the way or things that don't go well. But I think where my business is and where I am personally is like I just don't give up. If I'm terrible at something at the beginning, I think of it as a skill set versus a lack of a character deficit in me, right? It's just I don't have a skill set in it or I don't know how to do it yet, but I can get better, right? And so that's something that I really value in myself is just kind of the tenacity muscle of you can come swinging at me, but you're not going to get me down for long. And there's moments though, Jess, in my journey, I want people to listen to this where I do feel down. I feel like, what in the heck is this all for? Or, like how am I going to get up after this? But take a deep breath. Next day is going to be a completely different day. And for me, faith in God is really important to me. Like God did not put you on this earth to play it small and to not give you the tools that you need to keep going forward. And so usually when I get knocked down too, that is such a humbling experience for me to reground myself in my faith to say, okay, Kelsey, are you trying to do it or to do what God, it needs to do, or are you also relying on Him at the end of the day to help you go forward? So I would say I love that part of myself. This is not necessarily from the hardship, but I'm a very curious person. I don't settle for this answer is good enough. I always want to dig deep, which is why I know so much about kind of the neurology with the body and nutrition is I don't take a lot of things at just face value. And so I really want to learn for myself. And that has definitely got me in a lot of rabbit holes, but helps me see kind of the bigger picture and then help my own beliefs about everything to help people go forward too.
Well, you are helping so many women, Kelsey, with what you're doing. And I just want to encourage you to keep going, to keep following your path, to keep following what God has for you in your life because you're making a difference. And I can think of so many women just sitting here listening that will benefit from listening to this podcast and from learning from you. Because I think women really want to feel good in their bodies. We want to, and we're carrying a lot of things. And sometimes we need to take a moment for ourselves and see how we can build ourselves, stronger. And so I think that you're doing that for women. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I hope that if you're listening, you'll go check out Empower Her Fitness and Kelsey Lensman online. We'll put in the show notes how you can follow them and get in touch with them. And I just want to say that I wish you all the best in everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, but also thank you everybody that was listening. And I'm excited to hopefully help you guys in the future too.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Kels. Thank you for listening to Becoming Heartstrong. I hope you found today's episode inspiring and applicable to your life. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Before I go, this is just a quick reminder that I believe in you, and I believe that you too have the ability to become heartstrong. I'll chat with you soon.